A significant amount of TIFF films that made it into the Oscar nominations, which is always exciting. Your reaction to that?
It's great to see films like The Imitation Game and Theory of Everything, Foxcatcher, and Still Alice, which were all at the festival in September, do so well with the Oscar nominations. I mean, our audiences in Toronto have a great knack of really finding those films. Imitation Game won the Audience Award, and it's great to see it doing so well.
There has been a good run where usually the Best Picture, I think, what was it, last few years in a row,
That's right.
That have premiered at TIFF have won Best Picture. We've got a 3 in 8 chance this year?
That's right. I mean, it's a really interesting year, actually, for the Best Picture nominees, because they premiered all over the map, all over the calendar. At Sundance, at Berlin, at Toronto, Cannes, all over the place. And actually, that's healthy for the film industry. We're, of course, rooting for the films that premiered in Toronto.
And in picking the films that made it to TIFF, one of the ideas was, I know you guys were looking for ones that would premiere at TIFF versus that had premiered at other festivals. Do you think that you would have had maybe more in that Best Picture category if there wasn't that criteria this time?
I don't think so, actually. I think this was just one of those years where the Academy's gone for very independent films. There are very few pure studio productions in the Best Picture list this year, and these independent films happen to launch whenever they're ready because they have to get out into the marketplace and get that money back.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of these nominees, and there is a little bit of criticism out there about it not being diverse. When you look at females, no directors, screenwriters, cinematographers were female, no one of color in any of the acting categories. What do you think about the history of this?
Well, it's a long history. The Academy is only roughly 6,000 voters. They don't reflect moviegoers as a whole in America or the country as a whole at all. 93% white, 76% male, average age is 63 years old. So it's a very limited demographic. We have to remember movies are a very personal experience for people. We respond emotionally, we respond based on our own background, our own history. So it may be that very limited demographic of Academy voters just has a particular interest in what they want to nominate. It doesn't reflect America, unfortunately.
In this scenario, for this year specifically, does it have to do with performance, though? I mean, is it fair to say that who got nominated deserved to be nominated?
I think David Oyelowo gave one of the best performances of the year, playing Martin Luther King, and I would have loved to see him get nominated. He didn't get nominated. It was a tough field for Best Actor this year, but I certainly think he deserved to stand among those other 5 nominees. Ava DuVernay as well, who directed Selma, terrific work. That's a tough nut to crack, telling the story of this remarkable man and that whole movement. I think she did it well. She also did a lot of work on that screenplay, by the way, and to get a Best Picture nomination, but then nothing in screenwriting, nothing in acting, no director, how does it then become Best Picture?
Are we also looking from a smaller pool, though? There are less female directors and writers and cinematographers that are out there to choose from in general?
That's true. I mean, it's not really just about the Academy. It's a much bigger question of the movie industry and the entertainment industry generally. Typically what's happening is the stories we're being told don't reflect the audience that's out there. There are not nearly enough African Americans, Latinos, women who are actually able to tell those stories compared to the audiences that are laying down their money at the box office.
Is it then to the studios then to make movies that are relevant to different cultures?
You hope so. I mean, I think what we have to do as movie goers as well is just keep telling the people who make movies the kind of stories that we want to see, the kind of faces we want to see on screen, the kind of experiences we want to feel. I think the more we do that, the more they'll respond with movies that are going to be more reflective of our society.
For those who don't know, can you tell me about who is actually voting on the Academy? Who are they made up of?
Well, there are many different branches, professional branches within the Academy. So the animators vote for the best animated nominations, that kind of thing. And then the entire Academy, about 6,000 voters, these are all professionals in the film industry, people who make movies, they vote on the final winners on Oscar night.
How different is it, say, from the Academy Awards to the SAGs or the Golden Globes when it comes to diversity on those panels?
Well, I think those can be a little bit more diverse. The acting branch of the Academy and the Screen Actors Guild is a little bit more diverse because there's a much wider range of actors out there. Directors, some of the technical craft guilds like cinematographers and editors, those tend to be a little bit more uniform in their demographics.
So to be able to vote, how can that change down the road to see the changing demographic of voters? How does that happen?
Well, it's not going to be quick. I think the important thing to note is that it's 6,000 people who vote within the Academy. You have to be invited to become a member. You can't just fill in an application. And you're invited by other members. So the doors just open a crack at a time. I think the Academy is very aware of these issues of diversity. They're trying to do their best, but it is not going to be quick change.
Gotcha. Last year, the winner of Best Picture, 12 Years a Slave. So some people are making the argument of, well, look at the picture that won last year, so there really isn't a diversity issue. What would you say to that?
You know, I don't think there's anybody sitting in the Academy's offices in LA kind of plotting to keep people out. It's not about that. It's really more about looking at the overall trends, looking at the long history of this kind of thing, and looking really about trying to compare what happens at something like the Academy Awards with just the general movie-going public in America. We have those stats. We can see that there's a vast disconnect. That's, I think, what we're trying to address.
Great. Now I have to get your predictions. I'm going to go through some of the bigger categories. Sure. Best Picture, who do you think is going to take it home?
You know, this is Boyhood's year, and it's a remarkable story. This is a small independent film made by Richard Linklater over 12 years with Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette. It's just a really unique movie. That's the one I think that's the front runner for Best Picture.
Okay, what about Best Director?
I think that's a toss-up, actually. There's been a lot of good word for Alejandro Inarritu, for Birdman. Richard Linklater also, I think, a leading contender for Boyhood, but that one's, I think, a little bit tougher to call.
Okay, the acting categories are interesting. These are really strong categories and a lot TIFF-driven, which is phenomenal to see. Supporting Actress.
Supporting actress, I think, could go to Patricia Arquette. She also, signed up for a 12-year commitment to make Boyhood. She's terrific in it. People talk about Boyhood as a guy's movie. It's not. It's a family movie, and I think her role in it is as important. So she could well take away the Oscar.
Okay, great. What about actor?
Michael Keaton gave a great acceptance speech at the Golden Globes recently, and I think he's probably the front runner. But Eddie Redmayne as Stephen Hawking in The Theory of Everything, which launched here in Toronto, that is one of the performances of the year. There's no doubt. He's young, which may work against him with the Oscars, but I think he gives a great performance.
Transformative, though. Does Oscar look for these very diverse roles?
Well, yeah, I think you always have to look at what actors do, how they transform from who they are as people, and you haven't seen a greater transformation in a while than we saw with Eddie Redmayne at playing Stephen Hawking through the course of his career and his life.
So that was the lead actor. What about supporting actor?
This is a tough one. We had the world premiere of The Judge with Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall is, I think, 84 years old. He is a legend in Hollywood, and he gives one of his best performances, really, of his long career. So that's a hard one to vote against.
Yes, and finally, lead actress.
This one, I think, is kind of locked up, according to all the pundits, anyhow. I am not one of those, but everybody's been talking about Julianne Moore in Still Alice, another TIFF premiere in September, and she just gives a heartbreaking performance as a woman suffering from early onset Alzheimer's. She's hard to beat. Okay,
finally, I just got to ask you about snubs. You mentioned David Oyelowo, but who else do you think really just should have got in there?
I am continually impressed by what Ava DuVernay did this year with Selma. I think that was a big surprise that she didn't get a nomination for Best Director. The Lego Movie, one of the most popular, fun movies of the year. My son certainly loves it. Lots of kids and adults do as well. Not a traditional animated film, and that may be why it didn't get a nomination. Unfortunate. Steve James, a great documentary director who directed Hoop Dreams, which didn't get a nomination. His new film's about Roger Ebert. It's called Life Itself. Again, didn't get a nomination. Inexplicable to me.
Okay. And there's a lot of Jennifer Aniston buzz. Everyone,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I loved her in Cake.
She's terrific at Cake. Again, another movie that launched at TIFF in September. Everybody was really wowed when they saw it here by her performance. People, I think, still think of her as Rachel on Friends and the comic performances, but she's given great dramatic performances in the past. She continues to do that. She really stripped a lot of that kind of facade away, an actress's facade away to play the role in Cake, and I think we were all expecting to see her there.